Over the last 2 weeks, we've been building towards something really specific. We've talked about why AI amplifies whatever identity already exists in your brand. As well, we talked about the difference between performing your brand and actually expressing it. Today, I want to bring both of those conversations somewhere a little more personal, because what I've been seeing consistently with leaders such as coaches, consultants, speakers, even authors that I've worked with, you're showing up, you're creating the content, you're sharing your expertise, you're doing everything that you've been told to do, and yet something still isn't converting the way that it should. And it's not because the work isn't valuable or because you're doing it wrong, but because there's a gap between who you've actually become and how your brand is currently expressing you in the world. And that gap, honestly, it's quietly affecting everything. Now, before we jump into anything, for those of you that are new here, I'm Randy, and I've spent the last decade helping founders, entrepreneurs, and organizations build brands that are clear, trusted, and deeply aligned with who they actually are. Along the way, I've had the opportunity to work with everyone from emerging founders to globally recognized brands, including spending 3.5 years leading brand and creative strategy for Lewis Howes and the School of Greatness team. Now, over the years, I noticed something very interesting. The leaders who struggled the most with visibility, messaging, and conversion weren't usually the ones with the least experience. They were often the ones who had grown the most while their brand stayed exactly the same. Today, I want to show you exactly where that disconnect shows up in your business and what it actually takes to begin closing it. Now, I want to spend a moment on this because I think it's affecting far more businesses than most people realize. What I've been noticing is many leaders eventually outgrow the version of their brand that the market is still seeing. So your thinking has evolved, your expertise has deepened, your understanding of who you serve becomes more refined, and the transformation that you're able to create becomes significantly more powerful. But the brand, the message on your website, your LinkedIn bio, the way that you describe your work in conversations, it still reflects an earlier version of who you were. So the market meets the older version of your brand while you're operating from the newer one. And people that you're most equipped to help, they can often sense and feel that there's something that is not fully connecting before they can even explain why. And it's not because your work lacks value, but because the clarity of your brand just has not caught up with the clarity that you've developed. And when that happens, people don't see your work as clearly as they could. Now, I want to walk you through 4 specific places that this shows up. And I want you to notice how many of these feel familiar to you right in this moment. The first is your content. You're creating it consistently. Some pieces, it gets good reach. People are kind of engaging, but clients aren't coming in the way that your effort would suggest that they should. And the right people are seeing your content, they're just not seeing themselves in it clearly enough to begin taking action. That's a clarity signal, not a visibility problem. The second is in your sales conversations. Look, the right client shouldn't need to be convinced. They should need to be confirmed. Now, when you find yourself over-explaining your value, justifying your pricing, or making the case for why this works, the brand that brought them in didn't do enough of the work before the conversation even started. Now, the third is in your pricing confidence, not the number itself, but the energy in which you hold it. See, when your brand fully reflects who you are and what you create, charging what you're worth feels extremely natural to you. When it doesn't, and when there's a disconnect between what your actual value is and how it's being communicated, that disconnect will always show up as hesitation at the exact wrong moment. Okay, and the fourth is in your referrals. Now, the people that are in your world who genuinely want to send you clients can't, because they can't describe what you do in a way that actually carries weight. So they either don't refer you or they refer you to people who are not a qualified fit. And the reason for that is your positioning isn't portable enough for other people to carry a clear conversation when you're not around. Now, as I walk through those 4, I want you to ask yourself, how many of those felt familiar to you? And if more than one did, that's not a coincidence. It's often the same clarity issue that's showing up in different areas of your business. And here's what I want you to understand about this. It's not a failure. It's not evidence that there's something wrong with you or your work. It's almost always a sign that you're actually growing faster than your brand has. You've done the real work. You've deepened your thinking. You've gotten much clearer on who you serve and what shifts for them when they work with you. And your brand just hasn't kept pace with that growth yet. Now, most leaders respond to this by adding more content, more strategy, more visibility tactics, more tools to produce more output. But if the clarity issue is still there underneath all of this, more output just spreads the confusion further. Here's what actually creates clarity. It's going to be a focused look at a specific place where who you are and how your brand is communicating you and the business are not fully aligned. So it's not about a rebrand or some new content strategy or a complete overhaul of everything that you've built. It's one honest, precise conversation that identifies where clarity has been missing in your message, your positioning, your language, or even your audience understanding. And ultimately, it ends up mapping out what needs to shift first. Now, when that clarity lands, everything downstream changes. Your content becomes more specific. The right people, they start recognizing themselves in it. Your sales conversations even get lighter because the brand is doing more of the work before you even get into the room. And now your pricing holds because the value is finally visible in a way that it deserves to be. This is the work, not more of what you're already doing, but clearer from the very foundation. So if this conversation felt familiar, there's a reason why. You probably don't need more tactics right now. You need clarity. You need to see where your brand stopped keeping pace with your growth and the growth of your business. Because once that becomes clear, everything becomes easier to fix. That's exactly why I created the Magnetic Clarity Session. It's a structured clarity experience that's designed to help you see what you can't currently see in your own brand. We use a guided clarity console to map how your brand is currently being communicated, where it's breaking down, and what's causing the disconnect between your value and how it's being perceived. Now, by the end, you're going to leave with a very clear understanding of how your brand is showing up in the market right now, where it's losing clarity, and what needs to shift first in order to create alignment and conversion. This is not about adding more. It's about identifying the exact points where clarity is missing so that everything that you do going forward becomes more effective. Now, if you'd like to explore that, you'll find a link in the description. And if this video helped you to see your brand a little more differently, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what resonated the most for you. As well, if this is your first video on this channel, I'd go back and start with video number 3, why AI doesn't sound like your brand. It lays the foundation for everything that we've been building across all 3 of these conversations. The link is in the description and I'll also put it up here. Subscribe for a new video every Wednesday and I'll see you in the next one.